You know I'm right. Episode 51 right here in the zone. Nick Durst along with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, what a crazy week it's been in sports so far, especially in New York and the Big Apple. And we got to start with the news that is going to just change the landscape of Major League Baseball. And that is that Steve Cohen is now officially the New York Mets owner. We've been tracking this story for like 7 months, but it finally happened. He's in charge. He has a press conference, and he is just answering very honestly. He's saying he wants to win a World Series in 3 to 5 years. Making the playoffs isn't good enough, and he says we can't just contend. We gotta win. And you had, if you're a Mets fan, you had to like what you heard from him there. And of course, Sandy Alderson spoke as well. But Joe, what are your takeaways from the press conference that Steve Cohen held?
So we have seen, we discussed this right before we started this, wall-to-wall coverage on MLB Network and everywhere else about Steve Cohen and the press conferences that he's done, the interviews that he's done. He's been very, very outspoken and hands-on so far in his brief time since he took over full majority ownership stake in the Mets. And you have already seen some really, really important indicators that he's going to be able to turn this around very, very quickly. So even today, what we saw with Marcus Stroman. So obviously there were kind of questions about Marcus Stroman, but he ended up accepting the qualifying offer, and almost immediately after, we saw Steve Cohen, who is on Twitter, but he's not verified yet, even though he's getting that work done. He's said so. So we've seen him reach out to Stroman in good faith, right? So it seems like Stroman's going to be in the fold next season, which is very interesting for the Mets because now we know that they're going to have DeGrom. Stroman's likely going to be back. Syndergaard will probably be back probably around June or so. Like you said, assuming that the season kind of starts, with spring training and there's no real delays, because of COVID.
Yeah, you never know. Syndergaard could be back for opening day in July.
Very, very possible. Very possible. So what we've seen from Cohen is more so than anything with owners, you really want full transparency and you want as much honesty and loyalty as you possibly can get. And what's really great about Cohen is not only does he have a shit ton of money, but he's also a huge diehard fan of the organization. So you're getting that almost instantaneously. And it's resonated with not only fans, but players alike. We've seen reports come out that have said that there are players out there who are expecting to hit the free agent market this winter, who are now calling the Mets or asking their agents to call the Mets and reach out and see what they can do there. So that's a huge thing. Now, for years and years and years, obviously the Yankees have been the predominant organization in the New York area when it comes to having the means of spending money, to being able to go after the high-priced free agents, to be the preemptive organization in New York that can really attract other free agents and has the allure. But what we're going to see from Cohen now, I don't think this is going to happen overnight. Obviously, they're going to be in on a bunch of guys, right? But if they go into this winter, right, and they make a play and they sign one or two of the big guys like we anticipate them. We talked about this on the last podcast, and I believe they're definitely going to be on the top 3 or 4 guys, and I believe one of the 2 of the top guys for free agents this time around are going to end up signing. The allures for the Mets side is only going to get bigger from here on out. And coming from a Yankees fan perspective, I don't expect them to entirely take over the city, obviously, immediately. But, it's going to be worrisome now that not only are the Yankees going to be like a destination for free agents to want to go to? But now the Mets are back as well, and what Cohen also said in his introductory kind of presser on that stream, which I think was really, really indicative of the direction that he wants to take the organization, is he not only said we're going to continue building for the future, right? And he basically compared the situation to his hedge fund, where he's always looking for opportunity everywhere, right? He's going to try to cover all his bases like he would run a hedge fund, right? But he's going to try to take care of the continued development of the organization while competing now. And that basically says immediately, I'm going to spend whatever it takes. And for the Mets fans, the Wilpons never not spent money. They were always consistently in the top 8 to 10 payroll.
Correct.
But the spending was never indicative of a team that you would expect to be in the New York area. Now Cohen is going to spend money like he's a New York, like they're a New York franchise. And
he's got to spend money like he's the richest owner in sports.
That's got to be music to your ears, man.
Well, this is what I liked. Someone tweeted him, DWO1026 said, "How do you like being owner so far?" And Steve's response was, "Haven't lost the game yet." So that's that's the kind of attitude we like from Steve Cohen. And someone else on Twitter tweeted him, and Trenta KV said, "What's the one thing you want to achieve most as Mets owner?" And he said, "Win a World Series." I mean, that's the answer you want there. And Sandy Alderson, he comes on with Craig Carton and Evan Roberts and after driving WFAN, and he's pretty much giddy as can be when talking about Trevor Bauer. He's just like, "Oh, Trevor Bauer will be great in New York. He's entertainment." So I don't know. Is that Sandy maybe trying to play his hand to entice Trevor Bauer to come to New York? Bauer that on Twitter, sarcastically responded to that. Oh, something like, I thought that was bad for the game. You shouldn't show any personality. Can't play in New York. Trevor Bauer, if they could sign him, and why not, right, Joe? I mean, if you're going to put 2 Cy Young Award winners in a rotation with Marcus Stroman and presumably at some point Noah Syndergaard, and David Peterson looked pretty good, or maybe they bring back Matz or Seth Lugo. It's a pretty solid rotation, Joe.
It's more than solid. It's a pretty good rotation. It's one of the best rotations in baseball. Yeah. So I know you have your reservations about Sandy. I know you're kind of nervous about Sandy. But like I said previously, I don't think Sandy is going to be the primary decision maker. I think this move from Cohen was more so in good faith. And I mean, let's not also discredit what Sandy did. I mean, the Mets' most recent World Series appearance and success that they had, Sandy was a prominent part of that.
Now, Omar Minaya was a real prominent part of that, and yet guys
they were both. They both were.
I didn't like the Omar Minaya firing. I get it. Sandy Alderson replaced him, and then he was forced back on Sandy. So how often do you get to fire the guy you replaced and also fire the guy that replaced you? So Sandy Alderson on a power trip.
Yeah, that doesn't happen too often. But yeah, so I wouldn't look too much into the Sandy stuff, and obviously they're gonna do their best to try to continuously court Trevor Bauer. Speaking of Bauer, did you see the picture of him with wearing all the hats? There's a conspiracy theory.
The bottom hat.
Yeah, there's a conspiracy theory that the hand, like the hat on his right hand, which is his pitching arm, right? That was a Yankees hat. So people were kind of theorizing that maybe his heart is really more with the Yankees than the Mets.
I mean, look at it. If all things are even between the Mets and the Yankees, this guy sounds crazy, but some people might prefer to sign with the Mets because they do not want to shave or cut their hair, and that could absolutely impact free agency in the years to come between the Mets and the Yankees, Joe.
Well, I mean, we saw with Garrett Cole. He had he still has his gorgeous hair. He's got some of the best hair in the big leagues. But he ended up shaving his beard, and he had no problem with it.
Syndergaard would not cut his hair to go join the Yankees.
No, of course not.
Johnny Damon back in the day, if he could have came to the Mets and not have to shave, he would have done that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. The whole shaving thing is just really, really
That's
old school,
actually the
really
only
traditional.
rule I like with the game. That's the only thing I like about the Yankees, that they enforce you must shave and have short hair. Other than that, nothing I really like about the franchise. How about Steve Cohen? When someone asked him, like, "Oh, how did it go? Like in the bidding with against the other ownership groups?" He's like, "Who even bid on their team? I don't even know." People are saying he was trying to take a shot at A Rod. I don't think he was trying to take a shot at A Rod and J Lo, but that was another thing that was kind of pulling some headlines yesterday, Joe, from the press
Yeah, I don't.
conference.
Yeah, I don't think he was trying to take a direct shot at A Rod and J Lo. Obviously, A Rod was really, really, really until the 11th hour, really trying to figure out a way to make this work. Um, but from everything that I'm reading or read or gathered, it never seemed like that was ever really going to truthfully materialize
I
as
think
much as we read about it happening.
I think A Rod one day owns the Baltimore Orioles. That's my guess. I'm gonna say.
Well, I mean, Jeter figured out a way to get in with a team. So if A-Rod really truthfully wants to get in, and I believe he does, I believe he cares so much about baseball. I believe he loves the game so much. I believe as a TV personality, I believe he's thrived so far. I think he's done as much as he possibly can to redeem himself and to try to redeem his reputation with not only the players and people who work with the game, but fans alike. Uh, Listen, Jeter found funding, right, and now he's with the Marlins, and we've seen the Marlins. This year was, I mean, again, it was a little fluky given it was only 60 games and the nature of what we saw, but if we can take this year, as any indicator, with Jeter and what Don Mattingly have done, and congratulations, Don Mattingly, he won NL Manager of the Year like we expected he would, right? With Kevin Cash, that those announcements were made yesterday. Um, yeah, so if we can look at Jeter's success with Miami in this brief period of time, uh, and that was much more of a quick turnaround than any of us really, really, truthfully expected. I definitely think A-Rod's going to be able to figure out a way to put funding in somewhere and to become an owner for some franchise. Whether it is the Orioles or not, uh, there are opportunities abound for him. If he really truthfully cares about the game like we know he does, he'll figure out a way to get in somewhere. But uh, probably not with J-Lo though. That was more of a Mets play for her. I think it was more of a branding play. Whereas I think A-Rod really truthfully cares about the game and definitely wants to be hands on within an organization, whether it's an owner of the team, whether it's president of baseball operations or GM.
So
I
as
could see him
president of
making a
baseball,
good manager if he ever wanted to go that route, but I think he wants to own a team.
I think the Mets, maybe they stay internal president of baseball operations and give John Rico. He was the assistant general manager under Sandy Alderson. I think he maybe gets that job, and maybe you see J.P. Ricciardi, who was also assistant GM, come back as the general manager with the Mets. But time will tell. The thing we got learned out of the press conference is Luis Rojas is going to be back. I don't really know how I feel about that. Not too confident at this point as a Mets fan, but time will tell and see
Well,
how that works.
I think I wouldn't say Rojas is on the hot seat, but I mean, to
I
me,
think Rojas and Aaron Boone are on the hot seat.
I think Boone has less. Actually, I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about this, I think Boone has less pull simply because of the amount of time he's been there. He's had 3 years now, right? And while I think he's not, I don't think he's been a bad manager. I think Boone, for what it's worth, is just a good manager. But there are shortcomings that they've had in the postseason, right? And ultimately, when you're a Yankees manager and you're held to a higher standard, for better or worse than anybody else, uh, the fans definitely want his head. I think fans definitely started. If they didn't turn on him last year, they're definitely turning on him this year. So I definitely think that if everything starts on time and let's say the Yankees are kind of middling in 500 by the time June rolls around, I definitely think there's an opportunity that Cashman would make the move and let go of Boone. Whereas I think if Rojas and the Mets are kind of middling at 500 by June, I think he's more likely to finish out the season and then the Mets would move on from there and figure out somebody else to replace him heading